Hey guys, so I know that some of you um, may have been maybe confused a little bit or have expressed a little bit of confusion just regarding our leadership and leaders and when everyone's here and when everyone's not here. So I wanted to try and clear a little bit about a little bit of that up for everyone because I know over this past year so much has changed. We've been fine tuning things and adjusting things and getting new volunteers and new leaders. Um, and so there's just been a lot of like, what's going on here? I'm not sure what's going on. Um, and so hopefully this will help. I've just made a little PowerPoint presentation that I'm just going to kind of go over with you guys. And if you have any questions or are still confused, just let me know. You can call me, text me, email me, or you can talk to one of the leaders. But I've tried to make it as simple as possible. But just so you guys know and have just an understanding behind why, it's because we have to have leaders. We have to have people who um, are kind of multiplying what it is that we do. Because there's 5 areas of ministry. There's ushers, greeting, parking, security, and hospitality. And each of those 5 areas, I myself am not able to oversee all those with the excellence and fine detail that is needed. And so we have to have leaders in charge of each of those areas. But then to make the experience even greater, we have to have those leaders starting to invest and develop more leaders. Because we want to create really a community-like feel within the team and build camaraderie. So people can, so us as a team and all of our volunteers can stay connected and stay intertwined with each other, and so that they have someone to come and talk to when they come back to church. But the other thing is that when we are, starting to build relationships and investing in other people and other team members, then ideally people will start to grow and will start to experience more of the life-changing ways of Jesus. And as a result of that, the prayer is in that they would begin to pass it on as well, and even more people would experience the life-changing ways of Jesus. So stay tuned really quick. I'm going to transition over to my PowerPoint presentation, and we'll go from there.
All right, everyone. So what I'm going to be describing is, well, as you can see, this is just the first slide here, and I'm going to go over just the generalized leadership role descriptions that will hopefully help you guys understand what that means and what they all do. So first of all, there are weekend leaders, okay? Weekend leaders have 2 primary functions. A weekend leader serves for one entire weekend every other weekend and executes oversight and point leadership of the entire guest experience, from parking all the way to ushering. So they oversee everything for one entire weekend, both Saturday and on Sunday, both services. They make sure everything's running smoothly. They check in with all the leaders. They lead the circle up in prayer time. They make sure all the areas have enough volunteers and are covered, and they make sure that all objectives are completed with excellence. The other thing a weekend leader does is they serve as the head of one individual ministry, i.e. ushers, and works on the acquisition, development, and discipleship of all volunteers in that ministry. Okay? Now, a ministry team leader serves as the head of one individual ministry, i.e. ushers, security, parking greeters, or hospitality, and works on the acquisition, development, and discipleship of all volunteers in that and leaders in that ministry in order to provide an exceptional guests experience that inspires people to come back for more. Okay? So that's the ministry team leader overall. Now there are service hour leaders. Service hour leaders serve as the point leader for one individual service for one individual ministry, i.e. the 9:15 ushers service hour leader or the 5:30 security team leader, etc. They execute task fulfillment and delegate responsibilities, as well as follow up with volunteers and maintain their service team's commitment and involvement to create a camaraderie and community-like feel. That's the big one right there, okay? That's very important. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide. So in this next slide, you kind of get an idea of the current positions and who is serving in them, okay? So first of all, you can see that there are 2 usher teams, and the reason for that is because the usher team is pretty large, and we needed to split it in order to effectively serve all the volunteers and lead them and lead everyone better, but then also it creates just better camaraderie. We can execute things with finer detail and all that stuff. So for Usher Team 1, and you'll get an idea of why there's Team 1, Team 2, and later on. But Usher Team 1 is head up by Greg and Elisa. And so as you can see, the 5:30 leader for Usher Team 1 is Colt Scott. For 9:15, it's James Galloway, and for 11:15, it's Dan and Corey. Okay? Usher Team 2 is head up by Frank, Jolene, and James. And the 5:30 leader for them is Jason and Trish. For 9:15, it's Brian, and the 11:15 spot is currently open, I think. So, also, the reason why there's 2 teams, because again, most volunteers serve every other weekend. That's kind of how we have it set up. That's what helps the most. And so Greg and Elisa and Frank and Jolene and James, you'll see later on, but they're also the weekend leaders. And they rotate every other weekend for being weekend leaders now. All right, I'll get to that later. Head of security is currently open. We're looking for that and working on that. But we do have service hour leaders for the security team. We have for the 5:30 Mike Roque, for the 9:15 Gordon, and for the 11:15 Martin Lugo Sr. And so again, the idea is that each of these service hour leaders would then be working on just coordinating with the volunteers that serve at their individual service, and just trying to build relationships with everyone, trying to stay in touch with everyone to build that camaraderie. Now for greeters, the head of greeters is Kim, and currently she has all open positions for each of the service hour leaders. So let me go to the next slide just to continue this. Head of parking is Lance, and he has open positions for each service hour. And the head of hospitality or coffee is John and Robert, and they have open positions for each service hour. And so again, the reason why we have leaders, the reason why we have teams is because I personally, as one person, am not able to try and develop and disciple and invest in 150 volunteers. We're at about 150 now. And so we have to have leaders. We have to multiply our efforts and branch out, because we have to keep growing. And we want to keep reaching more people with the gospel and seeing God change lives. Okay? So the next slide is just a summary. Again, you have 5 areas of ministry within the guest experience. You have ushers, greeters, security, hospitality, and parking. And each ministry, again, has a head of ministry, aka the ministry team leader, and then also service hour leaders for each individual service. As a side note, as the team will grow, more leaders will be required. And that's why, again, we've split the usher team into 2 teams. And the thing is right now where we're at, you could see all the open positions. We need more people to step in and to step up. Because where we're currently at across all ministries, we need more people. We need more discipleship and development happening in order to provide the best optimal experience. The guest experience team needs excellence because we want to create an experience that people want to come back to and be a part of and see again, okay? Now, the next slide I have is for the weekend leaders, just to give an understanding of what's going on here. So we've talked about the service or the team leaders. and how each ministry has its own team leader. But now we're going to talk about the weekend leaders, okay? Weekend leaders serve every other weekend to execute overall guest experience oversight and lead the circle up times. Now, with some feedback that we've gotten over the past year and all the adjustments and fine tunings we've made, we've wanted to do this because, if you can remember, we used to do it where we had 4 pairs of weekend leaders that would serve once a month. But we switched it to where now there's two groups of weekend leaders, and they will rotate every other weekend to stay in line with how the volunteers work. Because this is to provide consistent points of leadership to go to and to look for when you serve, so that it's always the same people. So now, if you serve on weekend rotation 1, you will always see Greg and Elisa, or you should always see Greg and Elisa as the weekend leaders, as the point leaders. If you serve on weekend rotation 2, you should always see Frank, Jolene, and James. Okay? These are the weekend leaders. And so they oversee everything on their weekend, from the parking lot to the ushers and to the seats, everything. Now, this is just a really easy diagram that hopefully that you can kind of follow. But again, just to help you understand, if you're with weekend rotation number 1 with Greg and Elisa, you should be here every other weekend, and you should see them. If you're here on weekend rotation 2 with Frank, James, and Jolene, you should always see Frank, James, and Jolene when you serve, because you serve every other weekend. And then if you're coming every other weekend, you obviously won't be here. If you're on weekend rotation 1, you won't be here on weekend rotation 2. You're going to come back to weekend rotation 1. And it just goes back and forth, back and forth. The caveat is that on months when there's 5 weekends, we want to give Greg and Elisa and Frank, Julian, and James a break. And we're going to have stand-in weekend leaders who would be Kim, John, Robert, or Lance. Any 1 or 2 of these over here to be on the 5th weekend when there's months with 5 weekends. So hopefully that kind of clears some stuff up for everyone. Again, this whole past year, we've been through a lot of just different changes and adjustments, and with new volunteers, new leaders stepping in. And that's a thing, we're trying to build ministry. We're trying to build into people. We want to create a place where people love to come and explore faith and love to experience the life-changing ways of Jesus. But to create that kind of experience, we've got to continue to have more and more people and more leaders and volunteers step up to serve, to carry on that vision, but to grow it and to see more and more people, experience that and to spread the gospel even farther. So, hey, if you see any of these leaders that we've mentioned here, would you just give them, shake their hand, say thank you, say great job, thanks for their service, because these guys are giving a lot of time. We're talking like we meet once a month with all the leaders. I meet individually with each leader. And then plus, the being here on the weekends and serving and wanting to pour into all of you guys as volunteers. These guys are the wheelhouse, the powerhouse, the backbone of this ministry, because we cannot do it alone and we need you. So we're so thankful for you. Again, hopefully this helps, and we will see you in the new year.